Hi, my name is Shannon Wood, and I'm the principal timpanist with the Grand Rapids Symphony. I just love percussion and timpani. Everything we do is so rhythmic and colorful and exciting, and we add these elements and nuances to both the band and orchestra. From xylophones to glockenspiels to tambourines and triangles, all of these instruments make up the percussion family, and each of them will require learning a specific technique, which you'll need to develop and refine so that you can be a well-rounded percussionist and musician. So as we continue to move forward today, remember to listen carefully, practice hard, and above all, have fun. Let's get started. Now let's take a closer look at the drum. First of all, it's important to remember to always transport your drum in a well-protected case. Here I have a soft bag case. Soft bag case is ideal for light transport, has a strap on it, makes it really ideal to carry around. However, if you want to stack instruments, especially if you're moving several drums in a car, it's preferred to get a hard case. If you press down on this or stack anything, it'll actually press down and hit the drum. It could damage the drum. So let's take our drum out of the case. Depending on what case you might have a zipper or a strap. When you open it up, look at your drum. Drum should have the batter head. It's the head you play on, facing upward. I'm gonna carefully lift this out. It's a little bit heavy, but you can muscle it. I'll set my case down. Now let's talk about some of the parts to the snare drum. As I mentioned, this is the batter head. The batter head is the side you actually play. On the opposite side of the drum, it's called the snare head. It's called the snare head because that is where the snares reside. The snares are what produce the buzzing characteristic that a snare drum is well known for. And you can control that sound by this device right here, which is called a strainer. A strainer has two parts I'm going to mention: the lever, which disengages and engages the snares, and then the tension knob, which controls the tension of the snares. On the opposite side of that snare strainer is the butt, and the other end of the snare is connected to that. Next to it, you'll see this large knobby item. That's called a lug, and that is a housing case for the tension rods. These tension rods are threaded, and we use that to tune the drum with the drum key. You can change the tension and the pitch. And this tension rod goes through what is called a counter hoop. You can see each one has a hole, and it goes through this big round hoop here, which is a counter hoop. The counter hoop pulls the head down and pulls it down tight against the shell, and that's what helps give you the tension. If I turn the drum, keep turning it over, I'll come to this muffler. The muffler is an internal muffler. So inside here, you can't see it. You could see it from here actually, because it's a clear head. You can see that round thing down there against the batter head on the inside. As I turn that, it presses up on that batter head, and it helps muffle the resonance of the head. Now I prefer to use an external muffler instead, because as that little round disc here presses up in that little isolated spot on the head, it also changes the pitch. So when I'm playing, that part of the drum is going to sound a little higher because there's more pressure on it from underneath. So if you use an external muffler, felt, moleskin, any kind of cloth, you can control the amount of muffler by folding it, the placement, and it's just easy to move on and move off. And as I keep turning this drum around, come to another item here, and this is a little hole in the shell. This hole is an air hole. It allows air to escape the shell. It also helps project sound. You've heard me say shell a few times. This shell, this is the body of the snare drum, is made out of metal. Some snare drums also are made of wood or fiberglass. And the different kind of shell material helps change the sound of it too. Metal might sound a little brighter, wood a little warmer. And these are all the parts to the snare drum. There are two grips, traditional and match. I'm going to talk briefly about traditional and then focus more on match, since that's the grip that's used on all the other percussion instruments. Traditional is named traditional because that was the first grip developed, and it started from Civil War time. The drum was actually hung on a sling around the shoulder and on an angle. So the snare drummer had to come up with a grip that would allow him to play the drum without hitting the rim. So in the left hand, the grip is such that the stick lays between the thumb and the first finger. The third and fourth act as a support. The stick rests on them. The first and second come right over the top like that. You're about a third of the way up on the stick. And the rotation, the motion, is just like that. And so with this grip, you're allowed to play the drum, which is on an angle, without hitting the rim. And the right hand is held in match grip form. So let's focus on the match grip. If you drop your arms down, nice and relaxed and loose, you raise your right hand, just like you're going to shake someone's hand. Take the stick, place it at the first joint of your first finger, thumb on the top, and that's known as the fulcrum. And wrap your other fingers around the stick, and then flip it right over. I'm going to do the same in the left hand. I'm going to raise my hand as if I'm going to shake someone's hand. Place it on that first joint, thumb on top. Other three fingers just wrap around, caress the stick really gently. I'm about a third of the way up on the stick. Flip it over. And again, it's match grip because it's mirroring, it's matching your other hand. So just, you can look at your sticks, look at your grip, make sure they look evenly. Flip them over. And there you have it, match grip. Let's move on. Now that we know how to hold our sticks, let's get started playing the drum. We have a snare drum and a stand here. Let's set up the stand first. I'm going to loosen the wing nut. And these legs here you want to open just about so. If it's too high, the drum could tilt over. So you want to give it a nice width span here. Tighten up the wing nut, not too tight, just make it snug. You don't want to damage the stand. Here we have the cradle. It's called a cradle because it's going to cradle the snare drum. So I'm going to pull each arm down. Make sure that I loosen that cradle tension knob enough so that it's open. We're going to set the drum into the cradle. It's important that you pick up the snare drum properly. You pick it up like this around the shell, the counter hoops. Avoid picking it up from these delicate and fragile components like the strainer level or tuning knob. So I'm going to pick it up just about like this. And I'm going to line up the strainer so it's facing me, so while I play, I can control the lever or the tension knob. Place this upright like this. Make sure that I'm looking around, that the cradle isn't in a frame with any part of the drum. Okay, it seems to be all clear. Now I'm going to lift the drum just a little bit to take the weight off the cradle as I use my right hand and tighten up this tension knob here. We want it to be snug around the drum, but not too tight. Now I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to apply a little muscle here. I'm going to loosen this wing nut with my right hand. This controls the height. I'm going to use my left hand to raise it. I'm going to raise it up to about waist height. I won't know exactly where that is until I stand up, but I can guess it's about right here. So I'm going to tighten this, make it snug again so I don't damage the stand. Not too tight, but just snug. Now we're ready to move on. Now that we're in a standing position, let's set the drum at the proper height. I'm going to reach down here, loosen the wing nut so that I can raise the height to waist level. I'm going to stand up just to check. It's pretty good. Now with my left hand, I'm going to check the angle. This wing nut right here changes the angle of the cradle. Just hold the drum to make sure it's not going to fall. see how it swivels, we want it to be parallel and even with the floor. You know, we make this snug but not too tight. I'm going to get my drumsticks. Let's talk about playing areas. I'm going to play from the edge to the center, just so you can hear the difference in sound that the drum will create, and I won't even change my dynamic. Now, as you heard, when I played towards the edge, it's a very thin, delicate sound, soft. As I moved in, the sound seemed like it was getting louder. I wasn't playing louder, but the drum was amplifying the sound. It's just a natural characteristic of the drum. As I got towards the center, it's pretty percussive, dead, a little more impact. So for a general playing area, I like to play off center. It's a nice meaty sound, not too thin, not too percussive. It's about, let's say, 2 inches from the edge, maybe 2 inches from the center, okay? Now, just to reiterate, playing position, have your elbows come up, you're nice and relaxed, elbows to the side, about a 90-degree angle, wrists are flat, parallel with the floor. And I'm gonna let the stick fall, I'm gonna start with my right, and rebound off the head in the playing area we just talked about. Nice and relaxed, not fighting it. Now let's try our left hand. Great, let's alternate. Perfect. Now let's move on to the next section. Now let's talk about the bass drum. I just love this instrument. I love the low, sonorous quality of the sound, and it has such a beautiful range of color as well. Many of the parts are similar to the snare drum. You've got a lug, it's much larger because the drum overall is a lot larger, as well as with the tension rods. You have the hoop, and you have the head. Tuning the drum is similar to the snare drum as well. You do a cross tension tuning method, just going like this. As far as the amount of tension on the drum, you want to keep it pretty low. You don't want to have it too high like a snare drum where there's going to be a definitive pitch. You want to avoid pitch with the bass drum and have it just this low rumbling sound. The non-batter side, I prefer to tune it a little bit lower, but some also prefer to tune it higher. And you can experiment with that and see what kind of sound you like. As far as the playing area, similar to the snare drum, you want to play a little off center. Right in the middle, it's pretty percussive and dead and punchy. Off to the edge, pretty thin and airy. But just off center, it's a nice, low, sonorous sound. Stroke, match grip again. You want to let the mallet rebound off the head with a little bit of a J stroke so you kind of kiss the head. Kind of just get that membrane resonating. Now you can hear there's a lot of decay with this drum, unlike the snare drum. You hit it and it just sings and rings forever. Let's talk about the triangle. The triangle has 3 legs, 1, 2, 3, and you can suspend it by a clip, a triangle clip, and hand hold it or mount it on a stand. This clip has a spring and it opens up. It's easy to do because the way I'm holding it is I have my thumb under here, 2 fingers up here, so I can squeeze that. And these 3rd and 4th finger just rest under here for stability. Okay? You want to use a triangle beater to produce a sound because it's the appropriate beater for the instrument. Avoid using other beaters such as drumsticks or any other kind of mallet that's really not made for this instrument. We want to try to find the area on the triangle that produces the most shimmer, really beautiful mystical sound. You'll find when you're playing in different areas, some areas are going to sound a little more pitched, a definite pitch, and other areas will have a lot of shimmer in it. So I'm just going to play around different areas and just listen as I do this and see if you can discern some of the areas that sound really pretty and some of the areas that don't. Once you find that area, kind of make a mental note where that is and use that as your playing area. Again, the sound you want to look for is a lot of shimmer, a lot of overtones, partials, something really kind of mystical and pretty. Now, as you can hear, this instrument rings indefinitely like the bass drum, so you need to shape the sound. These fingers that also add as stability for holding it also serve a purpose for dampening the triangle. You can shape it really quick, staccato, or shape it so it lasts a little longer. And that's a really easy way to muffle the triangle and add some shape to the sound. You can also mount it, as I mentioned. If you mount it right on the stand, what you're going to notice is the vibration is going to transfer through the stand, and you're going to hear that metallic sound. What you can do is get a piece of foam and felt and mount it over that. So it cuts down the transfer of vibration through the stand. You can also use two beaters if you're playing multiple rhythmic notes on the triangle that are fast. You can also dampen with your left hand if you're playing individual single notes. One other thing I want to talk about is rolling on the triangle. As I mentioned before, there are 3 legs to the triangle. You can roll between 2 of the legs. Again, it's a match grip, and it's loose, kind of like how the pencil bends if you've ever done that. Very loose grip. You can practice rolling really soft or loud. Last thing is choosing the appropriate triangle. Just because the part says triangle doesn't mean you're going to grab any triangle in front of you. Listen to this sound. Very delicate, thin, a little high-pitched. Whereas this one, a little lower, a lot of low overtones, really pretty sound. So your job as a percussionist is to choose the appropriate sound for the passage of music. That's one thing I love about it so much like a painter would choose different colors to get that right color, that right hue, that right blend that he's looking for. Great, let's move on. Let's talk about the suspended cymbal. First of all, you want to make sure that it's set up at the appropriate height. I like waist height, similar to the snare drum. And also, you want to make sure that's not tightened too hard. If you tighten it too tight, it's going to keep the cymbal from vibrating and resonating. So just keep it snug, but with a little bit of room to breathe. Now also, just as with the triangles and wood blocks, there are different size cymbals. This is a 17-inch. You want to make sure that you choose the right size for the right color, the right sound, not just grab any cymbal that's in front of you. Here we have a selection of different mallets. We've got yarn, wound cord, and a wooden drumstick. The yarn, if I play towards the edge, is going to give me a nice, sustained, beautiful, dark, mellow sound. The wound cord is going to have a little more contact, a little more immediacy and pitch. And the stick, it's going to give me the most articulation. Now, if I move in from the edge with the yarn, I'm not getting a lot of sustain. It's sounding more pingy, poppy. It's not a lot of sound. Get a little bit more with the harder mallet. Still a different sound. And this is where you as a percussionist need to determine what sound are you after and why. Of course, as you're learning, the director is going to help make that decision for you. And the stick, a little more articulation, definition, less ring as I move in. That comes in handy when you're doing a difficult and quick passage. You can use 2 sticks, move in a little bit more where you're going to get a little more definition and articulation. If I play that same passage towards the edge, it sounds like a wash of sound. It's just not as clean, not as defined. Might even consider doing a buzz roll on it like you would the snare drum. But otherwise, normally and almost always when you roll on a suspended cymbal, use softer mallets. And again, my mallets are placed on opposite ends of the cymbal so that I'm getting each side of the cymbal to resonate and vibrate. You can do crescendos and decrescendos. Excellent. The last thing I want to talk about is muffling. If you've noticed, while I've been demonstrating these different mallets, my left hand has been muffling. Just like with the triangle, the bass drum, this instrument tends to ring a long time. So you want to shape the sound. Don't just hit it and let it ring. Look at the note value, listen to what's going on around you, and shape the length of that note. Might be quick. It might be long. You can also shape with a stick and get a little more chunky sound by using the shoulder opposed to the tip. Excellent. Let's move on. Let's talk about crash cymbals. First of all, just like suspended cymbals and triangles and wood blocks, there are many different sizes. These are 17-inch. Remember, as a percussionist, always choose the cymbal or the sound source for the appropriate reason. Make sure you're choosing it because it fits the music and not just because it's the closest pair of cymbals in front of you. Let's talk about grip. Got a strap here. You want to put your first finger against the bell, put your thumb right butt up against that, and use your other fingers to kind of pull the slack away so you're tightening the cymbal and drawing it closer to your hand. If it's too tight, you're going to create a lot of tension in your hand and maybe keep the cymbal from resonating. If it's too loose, you're not going to have the control you need. The cymbal will have a mind of its own, and you just won't be able to control it. So pull it snug, so you have a nice firm grip, some control. And then in the left hand, mirror what you just did in the right hand. Let's talk about executing the crash. I'm going to hold my cymbals at a slight angle. By doing that, I'm going to avoid an air pocket. An air pocket is when the cymbals collide and trap the air. Okay, I'm also going to angle them so that the bottom hits a microsecond before the top, similar to a flam like on the snare drum, but you don't want to really hear it, you just want it to be quick, nice and chunky sounding. So I'm going to keep my left hand stationary and move my right. Now, you can also move the cymbal up. You can go away from you or down and towards you. I prefer, because I'm most comfortable with going down, so that's the way I'm going to demonstrate it. I'm getting a little bit of movement from both, but my left hand is pretty stationary. Okay, now as you saw, to dampen it, I drew it into my body. The cymbals will ring a long time, so you need to shape that sound just like you have to do with the triangle. Okay? So I'm going to bring it into my body and dampen the cymbals. If I want a really quick sound, I'm going to bring it in quicker. If I want them to ring a little longer, just let them sustain and then draw them in. For a really loud crash, I'm just going to get a little bit more momentum, a little more movement. As you can see, I'm opening up the cymbals so they blossom like a flower. If I don't, kind of trapping the sound. When I open it up, it just flourishes a little bit more. And for soft crashes, keep the distance of each cymbal closer together. And if you have to dampen quick, just draw the cymbals closer to your body. Great.